77 people have been executed in Georgia. This is part 6 of the series. Jack Edward Alderman, September 16, 2008, lethal injection. Together with an accomplice, Alderman brutally murdered his wife Barbara in a calculated plan to collect the life insurance money from a policy provided by her employer, the city of Savannah. The crime was especially cold and methodical. Alderman and his accomplice, John Arthur Brown, first beat Barbara with a crescent wrench, then strangled her, and finally held her head underwater in a bathtub to make absolutely certain she was dead. After killing her, the two men went out drinking, stopping at two Savannah bars before driving to Rincon, where they dumped her body in a creek near her family's home to stage the murder as a random crime. The investigation soon unraveled the plot, revealing that the motive behind the killing was purely financial. Alderman wanted the payout from his wife's life insurance policy. He was convicted and sentenced to death, and over the years he became the longest-serving death row inmate in the U.S., spending 33 years awaiting execution. His conviction and sentence were initially overturned by a federal appeals court, but they were later reinstated after a second trial in 1984. His accomplice, John Arthur Brown, testified against Alderman in exchange for a life sentence. Brown was paroled in 1987, but years later, in 2000, he took his own life when police attempted to arrest him on child molestation charges. Alderman did not make a special last meal request. Instead, at 4 p.m., he was given the regular prison meal of baked fish, peas, coleslaw, carrots, cheese grits, bun, fruit juice, and chocolate cake. He didn't have any last words. Robert Newland, March 10, 2009, lethal injection. Newland resided with his girlfriend in a home across the street from 27-year-old Carol Beatty. Following an evening of heavy drinking, he went to Beatty's residence and asked her to step outside. When Beatty complied, Newland attempted to kiss her, but she refused and told him to leave. Undeterred, Newland tried again to kiss her, prompting Beatty to scratch and slap him in self-defense. Enraged, he pulled a knife and slashed her neck, continuing to stab her repeatedly. Beatty was taken to the hospital, and shortly before she died, she identified Newland as her attacker. Following his arrest, he gave a full confession, admitting to the brutal assault and stabbing. Newland declined a special last meal request. Instead, he was served a regular meal tray, which consisted of chicken and rice, carrots, collard greens, rolls, bread pudding, and iced tea. Newland expressed remorse for killing his good friend. "I'm sorry this happened. I wish I could go back to that day. I have no grudges against anybody. I still don't remember what happened, but what happened, happened." A few minutes after his final statement, he continued talking again after the death chamber's microphone had been turned off, but his words were only heard by the warden, security officers, and medical staffers behind the soundproof glass window. William Mark Mize, April 29, 2009, lethal injection. Mize was the leader of a small white supremacist group. One evening, Eddie Tucker, who had applied to join the group, went for a drive with several members. During the outing, Mize proposed that they set fire to a crack house and instructed Tucker and another man to ignite it using lighter fluid. The attempt failed. Afterwards, Mize drove the group to a remote wooded area, with Hetrop and Tucker walking ahead. Suddenly, 3 gunshots were fired in the woods, and only Mize and Hetrop emerged. Mize later confessed to friends that he and Hetrop had shot Tucker with a shotgun. Hetrop and another group member pleaded guilty to their involvement and were given life sentences. Mize's last meal was steak, fried chicken breast, baked potato, salad, garlic bread, a pint of butter pecan ice cream, half a pecan pie, and soda. Mize, in his final statement to a room of about 25 witnesses, accused the Oconee County Sheriff's Office of setting him up. He said Hetrop tried to take responsibility, but the courts have never heard him. "I saw my friend killed by another friend. I'm here because of a travesty of justice. It's on their hands, not mine. I'm ready." Mark Howard McLean, October 20, 2009, lethal injection. Around 1 a.m., McLean left his girlfriend Tina Butler's home and drove to a nearby Domino's Pizza. When a deliveryman returned to the store, McLean asked to buy a pizza. As the deliveryman entered, McLean forced his way inside and brandished a gun. The deliveryman ran through the store, and as he tried to leave, he saw McLean demanding money from the store manager, Kevin Brown. He later identified the license plate of the vehicle McLean drove away in, which was registered to his father. When the delivery man returned moments later, he saw Brown dead, shot in the chest and lying in a pool of blood. Brown died before the paramedics arrived. Within an hour of leaving the store, McLean returned to Butler's home and gave her $100 without explaining its source. After his arrest, McLean called Butler from jail, instructing her to dispose of the clothes, boots, and gun he had left at her house. He also demanded she provide him with an alibi for the night of the shooting and threatened to implicate her if she refused. Eventually, Butler told police about the call and turned over McLean's jacket and boots. The gun was later recovered a month later in connection with Butler's nephew. Butler testified against McLean at trial. McLean, meanwhile, claimed he had accidentally shot Brown, believing Brown was chasing him after hearing a noise while leaving the store. McLean refused the final special meal and he had no last words. Melbart Ray Ford Jr., June 9, 2010, lethal injection. Martha Chapman Matich was employed at a Newton County grocery store and had recently terminated her relationship with Ford, who, despite the breakup, continued to harass and threaten her. Ford had told an acquaintance that he intended to rob the store and blow her brains out. When arranging transportation to carry out his plan proved difficult, Ford persuaded Roger Turner, an unemployed man, to drive him to the store. Prior to the trip, the two consumed multiple alcoholic beverages, and Turner was promised $8,000 for his cooperation. They arrived at the store after it had closed, and Ford forced entry by shooting out the lower portion of the locked barred glass door to gain access. While Turner remained seated in the vehicle, he later informed authorities that he heard screams and gunfire mere moments before Ford emerged from the store carrying a bag containing money. Law enforcement officers responding to the alarm discovered Matich's body behind the counter, having sustained 3 gunshot wounds. Her 11-year-old daughter was found in the bathroom. She was still alive but had been shot in the head and eventually succumbed to her injuries. Both Ford and Turner were taken into custody the following day. Turner admitted to his participation. He entered a guilty plea and was sentenced to 20 years in prison, ultimately being paroled in 1991. Ford, on the other hand, told investigators that the shooting had occurred after Matich activated the alarm, and he maintained that the incident would not have taken place if he had been wearing a mask. For his final meal, he asked for fried fish and shrimp, a baked potato, salad, boiled corn, ice cream, cheesecake, and soda. His final words were, "I wish to thank all my family and my friends and my loved ones." After this, his voice trailed off and he began to mumble inaudibly. Brandon Joseph Rode, September 27, 2010, lethal injection. Rode and Daniel Lucas were in the process of looting the Moss residence, searching for valuables, when 11-year-old Brian Moss spotted them through a front window and attempted to intervene, entering the house through a back door armed with a baseball bat. The intruders overpowered Brian, forcing him into a chair, and Lucas fired a shot into his shoulder. Shortly afterward, they became aware that 15-year-old Kristen Moss was approaching the home. Rhodes seized her, made her sit in a chair, and shot her twice with a pistol. Later, when Stephen Moss arrived at the house, Rhodes ambushed him, shooting him with the same gun, and to ensure the deaths of all victims, Lucas returned and shot each of them again. Daniel Lucas, Rhodes' accomplice, was later tried separately for the murder. He received a death sentence and was executed several years later. Rhodes did not request a final meal and received a standard meal tray from the prison. His last meal consisted of a chili dog, tater tots, carrots, coleslaw, a slice of cake, and fruit punch. He had no last words. Emmanuel Fitzgerald Hammond, January 25, 2011, lethal injection. Hammond, accompanied by his girlfriend Janice Weldon and her cousin Maurice Porter, was driving around when they noticed Julie Love walking nearby after her car had run out of gas. They stopped and offered her a ride, but she refused and they drove off. Minutes later, they returned and Hammond forced Love into the back of their car while wielding a sawed-off shotgun. Inside the car, they discovered cash and ATM cards in Love's purse and coerced her into revealing her PIN number. When they drove to the bank, the PIN did not work. In response, Hammond beat Love with the shotgun and Porter essayed her. Weldon intervened, demanding Love to be released, and Love was dropped off at her apartment. Later, the man returned. Hammond bound Love and he and Porter tried to strangle her. They then transported her to another location where Hammond led her into the woods and shot her with a shotgun. Hammond later admitted to Weldon that he had blew the side of her face off. He disposed of her body in a trash pile. The sawed-off shotgun was recovered from Michael Dominic, to whom Hammond had sold it shortly after the murder. Love's earrings were also recovered after Weldon had pawned them for $140. Months later, Weldon had Hammond arrested after he beat and strangled her, and she disclosed that Hammond and Porter had murdered Love. She led authorities to Julie Love's skeletal remains. At trial, both Porter and Weldon testified against Hammond. Porter pleaded guilty to murder and essay and received a life sentence, while Weldon was granted immunity for her testimony. After his arrest, Hammond attempted to have Weldon killed by giving her photograph and address to an inmate about to be released, and he offered $20,000 for her murder. His last meal was fried chicken, French fries, corn on the cob, jalapeno peppers, mint chocolate chip ice cream, and cherry limeade. He didn't have any last words. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.